I have.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pause.
Welcome to Southwest Manuscripters / Surf Riders March 5th, 2022 Zoom meeting. We really appreciate all that are online today and any of those who will join us virtually in the future. So today we're going to start with Alan Cook, a longtime member of Southwest Manuscripters, I believe also a past president. Anyway, he's going to be talking about his latest book. Take it away, Alan.
Okay, thank you. I am on the air, right? I'm not. Yeah. Okay, I'm not being muted. Good. Okay, let me give you a quick update on my grandsons first, because you've heard from both of them. Matthew, the older one, is at USC grad school in music, and his group recently presented a concert of operatic arias, which Bonnie and I watched by Zoom, and that went very well. So everything is going fine there. Mason, who is a junior at Occidental College, is in the orchestra, and they recently had a concert, and we were able to attend that one live. And I just want to quickly read you from the program. I'm going to change glasses. Who the pieces were by: Carl Maria von Weber, Felix Mendelssohn, Camille Saint-Saëns, and Mason Cook. And what happened, the director asked Mason to write a piece for the concert, which he did. And he gave an explanation of how he did it, actually during the concert before they played it. And I think Van has given you the URL and a message. And anyway, he said that the first part of it came to him in a dream. But anyway, they played it. It went very well. And it's listed on the program as a world premiere. So anybody who likes can go to that part of the concert or listen to the whole thing, which is about an hour long. Mason's piece, actually, he starts talking at 43 minutes, and then after that they play his piece. Okay, on to my other report, which is on my latest book. And today I'm going to tell you how to make a novella out of a novel. I had published 2 novels in the Charlie and Liz series, Trust Me If You Dare and East of the Wall, when I decided to write a third one and base it in England in the 1960s. The other 2 are also based in the 1960s. So I went ahead and wrote 27 chapters and realized the whole thing wasn't working. So I trashed those chapters and started over again. After another 20-some chapters, I finally came to the conclusion that there wasn't a novel here. So the story is about a murder in the 1960s in an old English estate named Monksrest. It gets its name from a legend that supposedly dates from the year 1400 about some monks who were on a pilgrimage to Canterbury and stopped at a spring to rest. While at the spring, one of the monks kills the others and puts a curse on the place, affecting anybody who moved the bones of the dead men. And later on, this becomes the estate of Monksrest. So I was about to give the whole thing up when I realized I needed a poem about the event at the spring, which I wrote, and I'll read that to you in a couple of minutes. that inspired me, and I decided to write something shorter and as just a straight murder mystery. So Death at Monksrest is the result, and it came in at 18,500 words, not an 80,000 word novel. Around that time, I read a novella by Jeffrey Deaver, who is kind of a mentor to me because he helped pick two of my short stories for inclusion in Mystery Writers of America's anthologies. And in this novella that I just read, Jeffrey used first person present tense, while my book was in third person past tense. Well, since the story is 100% narrated by Liz of the Charlie and Liz duel, I figured, why not? I can make it first person present tense and it will read a little better since it's fairly short. So I went through the whole story, changed practically every sentence in the story and made it into first person's present tense. Then I asked my illustrator, Janelle, to design a cover for the story, which she did, and I think you've seen it because Van has sent it out in emails and even added some action to it, which is really not part of the actual cover. So I have now published Death at Monksrest on Amazon Kindle as an ebook, and my 24th book. In addition, I have commissioned Janelle to create a painting of the scene at the spring in the year 1400 where the monks stopped to rest. So she's working on that now. By the way, like all authors, I need reviews for the book. I'd be glad to trade reviews with anybody. I review your book, you review my book, that kind of thing. So be glad to do it, but as I say, I need reviews. Okay, I will now read you the poem that actually got me going on writing what is now the published version. And it's called, as you might expect, The Legend of Monksrest. 5 monks set forth upon a pilgrimage to make their way to Canterbury town. 5 monks in all, each one a sage, well dressed in monkish hood and monkish gown. They stopped to rest beside a flowing spring and drank their fill of bubbling water pure. And as they sat, they fell to arguing on point of scripture that each one was sure he owned the truth, and heated was their talk. From 'neath his cloak, one pulled an evil knife and flashed the blade, nor did he even balk, until he'd ended every monkish life of 4 companions. Seeing what he'd done, he felt remorse, and dug in rain-soft earth a grave, and placed the bodies one by one beneath the ground, despite their generous girth. He covered them with dirt and sticks and stones, and scratched these warning words upon a rock. A curse on you who move these holy bones, as sure as just at sunrise froze the clock. Okay, that's my report. Thank you for giving me the time. And as I say, if you would like to trade reviews with me, I would love to do it.
Wow, I love the theme, Alan. It's like a cross between Canterbury Tales and The Name of the Rose. Are you familiar with the novel / movie, The Name of the Rose?
Yeah.
Sean Connery. I bought the book and met the author, and he didn't like it made into a film. He's brilliant. I forget what his name was. A very, very famous, The Name of the Rose. If anyone else knows who the author was. So I got to visit with him at a book signing. I commented about the movie, and he just looked, well, that was, whatever. It has nothing to do with whatever. I mean, anyway, he was a little offended that I compared it to a Hollywood production. But anyway, thank you, Alan. Yeah, and anybody, seriously, that's something else we need to start doing is reviewing books. What I want to say, reviewing each other's books, and help that way tremendously. So it looks like Faith Goodman was going to give a reading today, but she's not here yet. So I'm going to go ahead and have William introduce our very special, very appreciated guest speaker, Kendra Nicholson. William,
Yes,
take it away.
yes. All right. So hi, everybody. So I'm very excited that my good friend Kendra is going to be talking with us today. I've known her for years and years, but she recently wrote her first book, and it's an interesting backstory, which I'm sure she will tell you about. She took a very tragic experience and tried to turn it into something positive as a way to help other people. And so the little blurb that she gave us, she's been telling stories since she was 3 years old, when she memorized the Three Billy Goats Gruff and shared it with anyone who would listen. She went on to graduate with a degree in theater before eventually teaching and performing comedy improv in Long Beach, California. In 2018, she lost her 18-year-old son to suicide and began writing about her loss and about the memories of her son that she wanted to hang on to. Her writings became a book called The Climb. She's working on her second novel, and she edits and writes copy for Bright Futures USA and Safe and Sound Schools. And she also has a blog, which is very good as well. So I encourage you all to check that out. So without further ado, Kendra, take it away. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, William. That's a wonderful introduction. Well, thank you for inviting me. I was under the impression originally that it was a book club, like people read the book and I was going to talk about it. And then I found out recently that it wasn't. So I was like, oh, wow, this like changes my whole perspective of how to talk about it. And I hope I have enough to talk to you to keep your interest. So my background, I'll start with talking about how I grew up and how that sort of led me in the direction that it took me. I was born and raised in a small town in Missouri, in the heart of the Ozarks, called Salem. And my dad was one of 16 children. And they lived on a big farm, you know, in the heart of the Ozarks. And so needless to say, when all of the family members got together, it was always a lot of storytelling, a lot of remembering, a lot of just sharing and talking. And it always sort of, I enjoyed those times so much that I began sharing, you know, like William said, when I was little, I was super, super shy, painfully shy. I would hide behind my mom's legs, and then she would say, come and tell your story. And then I would step out and and tell everybody the story with voices and everything, and then hide when it was over again. So I think just kind of naturally I was led into theater, you know, and sharing other people's stories, other people's words. And I did a lot of theater, and my degree is in theater. And then I had my children and we moved to Southern California. And that's when I discovered comedy improv. And that's when everything sort of changed for me, when I discovered improv. And the style of improv that we did, the school I went to and the school I taught at, it's called Held Together, and their motto is improv for life. And they like to focus on the way that the ideas, the rules, the guidelines of improv can help you live your everyday life, you know, being in the moment, really truly listening. And the biggest part of improv is yes and. When you're doing scene work, you accept whatever information is coming to you and then you add to it. And so you know, I've learned at this point to just sort of accept whatever idea comes to me, or whatever I get invited to do when it comes to writing or editing, anything like that. I just say yes, and if I don't know what to, I figure it out. I just add to that. But so the book came together for me in a different way. Really, the only writing that I had done before I wrote this book was when I did some sketch writing, just writing scenes, sort of like Saturday Night Live type sketches with my troupe. And so that was really my background as far as writing goes. I was an English literature major, and so I did a lot of reading and a lot of research and a lot of writing about other people's writing, but hadn't really done much of my own. And so I'm going back again. My dad, growing up, we lived in poverty. We didn't have much, and so my dad was an alcoholic, and he struggled to hold a job, and his behavior was very unpredictable, and he drank a lot, and so it wasn't until I was a senior in high school that my mother took me to the hospital to meet his doctor and talk to his doctor. And that's when I realized that my dad's doctor was a psychiatrist, and that he had been diagnosed years before with bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. So all of that secrecy growing up and all of those things that we never talked about, I felt compelled at that point to try to be more open with my own experience with my family, and to tell them about my dad and to talk about our family's history of mental illness. But then my son, Trevor, he was my youngest son, and he always struggled socially and had some problems. He had some anxiety. We knew when he was young, and that he was on the spectrum. But when it was time for him to go to college, he was nervous, and most people are, that's a big transition for kids. But once he got there, and he started trying to, find his place there. I was excited when he went, because since I was always very shy, and college was really where I found my voice. That's where I found my people, and that's where I found, what I wanted to do. And I had hoped that would be the same for him. But it didn't turn out like that. He began struggling, but he kept it a secret. And during that time, we didn't know what was going on. We were talking to him. Everything was fine. Everything was okay. He was doing okay. And it wasn't until we found out that he had stopped going to class and stopped leaving his room that we knew there was a real problem. And so, of course, we brought him home, and he was in intensive therapy. And I had stopped working at that point so that I could stay with him to, take care of him again. And he seemed to be doing better, but then he had been home with us for, it was, December, January, February. Yeah, he had been with us for a couple of months. And on January 25th, 2018, my son, who was a climber, that was his favorite thing to do. He was a rock climber. We would take him to the climbing gym, and we would take him to Stony Point climbing area in the Los Angeles area, and he would climb. But he went down to the port of Los Angeles, and he climbed the outside of a warehouse. And he took his life. He jumped. And that process of trying to move forward with my grief and trying to really dig in and figure out why in the world in 2018, decades after finding out about my dad's mental illness and the secrets there, why we were still keeping secrets. And I decided that it was time to begin sharing. I could talk about it or I could do something about it. And so, in true improv form, I said, okay, yeah, I'll do this. And I started out just kind of journaling, writing down my feelings and how I was processing my feelings. And then I began sharing a little bit on social media, and social media, as you all know, is a great tool for reaching out and connecting to people. And so I began sharing stories about my son. And then the more I wrote, the better I felt. And the more I wrote, the more people came up to me sort of quietly in the background and said, you know what, me too. I have felt that way, or I live in fear that I'm going to get that phone call about my child. Those sorts of conversations started happening. They still weren't happening like out in the open, but I knew that as we were working our way toward that, that to have a book as a sort of a connection, to feel like you're not alone, somebody else understands you, is really what compelled me to write that. And so I decided that I would write it from the perspective of a 13-year-old boy who loses his big brother to suicide. And it's sort of his journey of trying to move forward and go back to his normal life, which will never be normal again. And it was a really, really great way for me to process those feelings myself. It was a very therapeutic writing process for me, because to write from the perspective of somebody who's just learning to find their place in the world. So, it's a short book, because I've written it sort of it's aimed toward young adults and teenagers. Now I've had adults who have read it who have said, I loved it. I really got a lot out of it. And, dealing with grief, and especially the grief, it's a sort of a niche market, because when you're dealing with grief from loss to suicide, when I was writing it, I was thinking that there probably weren't a lot of people who could relate. But sadly, as you know, we really are in a crisis. And I'm hearing more and more and more and more friends who have lost friends and children. And since I wrote my book, my brother attempted suicide as well. He survived, but there's just a need. There's a need. We need to talk about it. And I have started also, I was invited to go to a conference in Arkansas and, talk about it there and do some public speaking. And I found the same thing happened there. When I got up and told Trevor's story and my story, people came up to me, and it was a teachers convention, and they said, the same things, like, I'm worried, I'm scared about, literally the same words. I'm afraid of getting that same phone call you got. And they did it just like other people had been doing it, coming up to me quietly, looking around to make sure nobody was listening, saying things like, I'm sitting at a table with half a dozen of my coworkers and none of them know, and I just feel like being a mental health advocate, sharing those secrets, making it okay to talk about it when it's beyond your control. It's a brain illness. And hoping to shed some light on that and letting people know that it's okay to be open about it, to talk to your friends, to talk to your family. You don't have to go on social media, but find someone, and I think that's sort of the purpose of the book, is to, let people know that they're not alone. And that it's, if you just reach out to anybody around you, you'll be surprised at how many people are dealing with either on their own or somebody that they know. And, mental illness is very isolating, and connecting is a tremendous help, with that. So yeah, let me see. Got some more. I'm sorry, excuse me. Okay, so and as far as my writing, I think that my writing is very character driven. And I think that probably comes from my study of theater and acting, is I always look at it from a specific character's point of view and trying to speak in a character's voice, to really find that voice. And so for me to find that voice of a 13-year-old boy was interesting. It was an interesting exercise for me. And since I've written that book, I have found a lot more opportunities that have been coming to me as well. And I think that, like I said, yes, and I have learned to say, okay, yeah, let's do this. And then go, oh gosh, what do I do now? Just figure it out. And so I've been doing some editing for a couple of nonprofits. There's one that's called Safe and Sound Schools, and that's a company that was started by a lovely woman named Michelle Gay. And Michelle started it with a friend of hers, and they both lost their children at Sandy Hook Elementary at the school shooting there. And so she has come forward and started a nonprofit where she travels and she tells her story, and she's changing the way that we view school safety in every aspect. And that's just been a really wonderful connection to have made through this. And so I'm editing for them. I'm writing some copy for them, and also for another educational group called Bright Futures. And Bright Futures is they're partly interested in school safety, but they're also really talking about, they go out and they make connections between communities and school districts in order to find those community resources that can help the kids that live in poverty. And so yeah, for them, I've done some writing for them as well, and I'm helping them rewrite their website. And so, for me, my writing process is, it's been great to find out that, I can do these other types of writing that I wasn't expecting to be able to do. And I just encourage you guys to stay open to whatever comes your way and to give it a try. I also have it's a very, very small writing group. There's 4 of us. We want to keep it that size because we just we meet every other week, and we will do like these exercises where we'll give a word for inspiration, and then the next 2 weeks we come back and we have whatever it is that we've been working on, and then we get feedback from each other. And so just it's a really nice little group, and they all do different types of writing. And there's a playwright, there's somebody who writes stories for a podcast, and it's just a nice mix and a nice way to not only get feedback, but to be open to other styles of writing and find your inspiration in interesting places. I've also been working on a short story. My brother-in-law is a writer, and he's been writing these short, like, horror stories for a podcast in the Midwest, and it's called Fear in the Heartland. And it's a voiceover actor, and he takes these stories and he reads them, out loud for his podcast. And he said, "Hey, are you interested?" And I was like, "I've never written any kind of a horror story, or, but I said, yeah, absolutely." So I'm writing a ghost story right now, and I wanted to put a little bit of a different spin on it, so I'm writing it from the perspective of the ghost. So I'm enjoying that as well. But the thing I love about this group that you guys are in is I think that you really are dealing with the part that I hate the most, which is self-promotion. Getting it out there, letting people know it's out there. That for me is it's the most difficult part. And so I think just like every chance I get to talk about it, every chance I get to post about it on Facebook or wherever I can post about it is important and helpful. And like Alan was talking about earlier with, hey, got this group that we can review for each other. And I think that's amazing. That's wonderful. So yeah, I'm hoping to make more of those connections as well. And I am also working on another book right now. And this one is a little different. It's a fictional book as well, but this one is writing about, it's kind of a mix, like write what you know, writing about growing up in the area that I grew up with and in the environment that I grew up in with my family. And it is called Dormily, and that's the name of the main character. She's named after my aunt, because I think my aunt has one of the most interesting names. You find inspiration everywhere. Her name is Dormily, and she's just the loveliest person. And so I'm writing that right now, and I have an excerpt. I don't know if you're interested in. Is that okay? Okay, I'm just going to read the prologue, and we'll go on from there. So memory is a funny thing. My papa died when I was only 4 years old. Mama has told me how we used to go over to visit him. She said he would clap his hands and smile his toothless gummy smile and say, "Dance, sissy gal, dance for papa." And I would. We didn't need music. I would clap along and bounce up and down and twirl around while he laughed. And when I think about it, it doesn't feel like a memory. It feels like I'm watching an old home movie. I can see Papa, but I can also see myself. I'm wearing a dress I've recognized from a photo. I've heard the story so much that I can imagine it, but it's not a real memory. I'm only picturing the story that Mama tells me. But when I smell pipe tobacco, I remember him. I know it's a real memory because it's as if I'm there again. I'm not watching from a distance, and I'm not seeing myself. I smell the stale cherry vanilla pipe tobacco and the patchwork quilt he's lying under. It's hand-stitched with simple squares and shades of brown and orange. It's heavy with a blanket in between the layers instead of batting. And it's not quilted, but instead it's tied together in the center of every other square with frayed yarn, used to be white, but is dingy with smoke. I can see my chubby little fingers working the yarn, twisting it as tightly as it will go, and then letting go of it, watching it slowly untwist again. I smell a hint of something else in the air that makes my belly feel queasy. It smells sickly sweet, sort of like nail polish remover. Even at that age, I know that it's the smell of my pawpaw dying. I am looking down at his face from my spot on the bed where I'm squatting there next to him, my bare foot almost touching his shoulder. His skin is sallow. It's the same yellow that stains my chin when I rub a buttercup flower on it. My cousin Greta Kay told me that if it makes your chin yellow when you do that, means you like butter, even though I know now that it stains everyone's chin. When I was 3, I was amazed. I liked butter so much, I would sneak a little bit out of the fridge every chance I got. I stare at Pawpaw's face and I think he must like butter even more than I do, since his entire face is buttercup yellow. His sunken mouth makes a soft pff sound as his lips slightly puff out each time he exhales. I try to breathe exactly like him. I watch really close and I can make the same pff sound, but I can't match his rhythm without holding my breath in between because his breaths are coming so slowly. I reach over and lay my hand on his forehead. He feels warm on my cool fingers. He opens his eyes and I get scared that I'm going to get in trouble for waking him up, but he just smiles at me and whispers, "You Pawpaw's little sissy gal?" I nod my head and I reach across to trade hands because his fevered skin has warmed the other one already. I stick the warm hand under the pillow to cool it off so it's ready for the next switch. The whites of his eyes are so jaundiced they're almost the color of the circus peanut candies Mama keeps in the turquoise Tupperware bowl on the little table next to her rocking chair with her Bible and the day's newspaper. I can see his bones too close to his skin through his thin pajamas. He used to be a big man, but there's a little less of him there in that bed every time we visit. His mouth trembles and his eyes water as he tries to smile at me when I switch hands on his forehead again. Daddy comes in to tell me it's time to go, but I don't want to leave, so I start to cry. Mama tries to bribe me by offering me one of her circus candies, and I'm surprised because she's stingy with her candy, but I just shake my head and keep quietly crying. And then I lie flat on my back with my arms at my sides, as close to him as I can get. Daddy picks me up and says, "Come on now, sis. Pawpaw needs to rest." I watch Pawpaw over my daddy's shoulder as he carries me out of the room saying, "Hush now, stop that carrying on. You're a big girl, ain't no need to be fussing like that." Mama puts a circus peanut candy in my hand as we leave, but I don't eat it. I squeeze it as hard as I can and I drop it into the grass as we go out to get in the car, and I wipe my sticky hand on Daddy's shirt. That's the last thing I remember from the visit. That squished up little ball of orange candy lying there in the grass. That was the last time I saw my Pawpaw and the only real memory I have of him. I sure do wish I could remember dancing for him, but I don't. That's life, I suppose. The things that make you feel bad are the things that stick with you. Right. So that's it. I don't know if you have any questions or.
Yeah, I have one follow-up. So one thing that I really was impressed by in your book was that even though it really tackled some serious subject matter, there were still moments in there that brought in some humor. And so my question for you is how you kind of walked that line and how you made those decisions. And I know that probably some of your improv background came into that.
You know what, that's a really great question. And, you know, when you're, there's multiple reasons for the humor that I add into my work. And like you said, you know, the comedy improv, of course, lends itself to that. But I've always found that those moments of levity are necessary. Even when you're in the midst of soul-crushing grief, if you don't have those moments of levity, then you don't have a reason, you know, and especially if children are reading this book, if we're letting, you know, teenagers read the book, then if it's all dark and hard to read, it's not enough. Do you know what I mean? Life is full of those moments. We had those moments. One of the moments in the book actually is one where we were at at my son's memorial, and it was brutal. It was brutal. But at the end, I was standing with some of my friends, and we were talking about, at one point, one of my other friends came up to me and she hugged me, and it was one of those hugs that just, it went on a little too long. You know, it became really awkward, where I was like, okay, I'm done now. How do I get out of this hug? And we were kind of laughing about that and discussing ways, like, do you just go limp like a toddler when you're trying to pick them up and they don't want to be picked up? And so we were laughing at the, at my son's memorial. And I realized, those moments are necessary. They're necessary for life. So, and my son was one of the funniest people I've ever known. He had an amazing sense of humor, and it wouldn't be doing him any justice to not share that too. So a lot of the stories that in the book that I share that are funny are actually stories that come from him, things that he did. Thank you. That's a great question.
Kendra, you have a fantastic tool for self-promotion in your ability and your performance ability and your voice. So now to match that with things of your own to narrate
Thank you.
really, again, you've got it. But I think a lot of us, especially a lot of us gals, are kind of, raised with don't brag about yourself or whatever. So it's a very hard thing to break out and do that. But again, with us and your performing ability really is just it's going to match your writing ability beautifully. It already does.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions, or comments or anything to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Kendra, that, and I'm in no way taking any credit for what you've done by saying this, but, we did know Trevor growing up, and we miss him tremendously. And so when this happened and Kendra started sharing her memories of Trevor on social media, they were always so beautifully written. And I remember saying to her, you should write a book. And that's why I say I take no way any credit for the fact. But I could tell that just the voice that you would have, Kendra, telling that story or a story that came out of that experience was going to be amazing, and it has been. And like William, I'm really impressed at your ability to make the story palatable by adding in some humor and some levity so that it's not just, so hard to read.
It's tragic.
Yeah.
It is a tragic story. So if you don't add, like you said, if you don't add that in, and also, Beth, I want to say, you said you don't want to take any credit for it, but let me tell you, I give you and everybody else that encouraged me credit, because I wouldn't have done it.
Well, I'm really glad that you did do it. And when you talk about the book that you're working on now, I didn't know if you're aware of the book called Educated.
No.
If you haven't read it, you should. I had a tough time with it. Some people love it, but it's a memoir, and the gal's story sounds a little bit similar to yours.
Okay.
So, and it's a bestseller. So you might want to.
I think I've heard of it, but yeah, I will absolutely look at that.
But she did not put in any humor, and I think honestly would have benefited from that, because for me it was just I couldn't get a good lesson out of it. I was just reading this tragic story, and I was left with, okay, because I want to learn something, from it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I feel like you did that with your book. You gave us a takeaway, or takeaways, and I think that's what makes a book great, right? So anyway, I just appreciate that, and I just wanted to say that. So
thank you.
That's another reason writing communities are so important, for the encouragement that we can give each other, for the shared experiences that we can offer, and also how to get it done, not only doing it.
Exactly. Yeah, and Beth was a huge help with that too, with her book.
Yes.
I used that in publishing my own book. So, that's an amazing tool. Thank you, Beth.
Does anyone, Sharon just joined. Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
Sharon, did you want to?
Darn thing.
All right, somebody's not muted. Unmute yourself when you wanted off. LD, unmute yourself. All right, wait a minute. Someone is not muted in there. Sharon, can you mute yourself? I think there's.
There's something wrong with my computer.
Oh,
I'm trying
you
to
can't.
switch to Windows 11 and I kept trying no, and it said dead narrator.
It sounds like the radio. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you, LD. Yes.
Oh, okay. Somebody, oh, it stopped.
Good.
I can't
No.
stop it.
Is the radio on, Sharon? Can you turn off the radio?
It goes on again.
Yeah.
Agree to our link.
Van, can you
It
mute
is.
Sharon? Van, can you mute Sharon, please?
I can't even find the mute button. It's controlling everything.
Yeah, I don't think Van's on board right now.
Okay.
Okay.
See, I turned the sound down. but
Yes,
I don't know why
that
this
helps.
narrator-
Okay, you can keep it down. Go ahead, LD. Sorry.
Well, that's thank you so much for sharing. It's very dramatic. I have 2 children, and I am afraid my husband has a kind of depression, and
Yeah.
both of my children has depression. That's something that certainly didn't get from me. Gosh, you know me. It's very difficult because I am scared, especially for my son.
Yes.
I am scared out of my mind. My daughter, who became, she's teaching at Harvard University, she's at the top, but she's struggling so hard.
Well, and that's the thing about mental illness and depression. There's no socioeconomic, it knows no race, it knows no socioeconomic level. I mean, it is pervasive, you know, and I think that
I'm just scared. I know
I
it's
know.
gonna happen. I feel, I see the signs. I see, and there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do.
I know it's terrifying.
It's horrible.
It is terrifying.
So
And I wish
going
that
through
I had,
that, I imagine that that's the most horrible thing a mother can go through, is to lose the children. And
The pandemic too has so compounded. It's so affected. And I remember reading something about teenagers, their brain development isn't as such till they really cannot
No.
comprehend the long-term repercussions.
No.
You know, it's like an instant thing, and they don't have the wherewithal yet because the development isn't there yet.
right.
Say, okay, to project down the road, if I do this, this might happen. This is going to affect so-and-so. It's just,
Right.
and it has nothing to do with teaching them that or whatever. It's just, it's not developed to that point yet where they can.
Exactly.
project
They
that.
don't have the foresight, you know.
Exactly.
What
So
they live in this idea. I feel like that kids, you know, that age live, they truly do live in the moment. You know, I try to live in the moment, but you know, it's hard for us as adults. You know, I live with regret, and I live with fear of what's going to happen. And so it's hard to stay in that spot, but kids, I think, sort of live in that spot. And so what the things that happen to them feel like the end of, you know. And my son, from the roof, he texted his best friend and said, "I'm sorry, but I have to do this." Like you know, and that was the last anybody heard from him. And so to say those words, "I have to."
In the moment, he had to.
Yes.
He didn't realize if he could just survive that moment,
Correct.
in the next moment, he wouldn't
Exactly.
have to.
Exactly.
And there are certain groups also, you know, like Native Americans and like especially the Maasai in Africa, they also live in the moment. So, you know, like if you imprison a Maasai in Africa, they think that's forever, and they can literally just die because they think that that's how their
Mhm.
situation is going to be forever.
Right,
So in a way, too, especially young people's minds haven't.
right.
And it is with the pandemic again. It's going to see for those that tune in later, years from now, whatever. We are at the tail
Right.
end of a 2-year pandemic, and it's affected all of us in different ways, but especially
Yeah.
teenagers being so social, and
I
social
was going
media
to say, being so social, to have
Yeah.
that sense, that isolation, not being able, and there's also, though, it's interesting. I feel like in a way with Trevor being, it was difficult for Trevor to be social, and it was easier for him to connect to people online. So he had friends online that he talked to comfortably, but to be in person with people was really overwhelming for him sometimes. And I worry that these kids that are like Trevor, that have been at home in their safe space connecting virtually, are going to have trouble going back and being in the midst of chaos that they're not accustomed to. I just feel like they really need support. They need to be able to talk about it to somebody and be open with it, because as an adult, I struggle with the pandemic and the isolation, and so I can't even imagine what a 13-year-old or 14 or 15, it's just.
I really like your idea of writing your book from the perspective of a 13-year-old and how affected they are by what happened.
I think Ginger wanted to say something.
Ginger.
I was just going to say that I thought that doing it from Jeri just said it, so I stopped, but doing it from the perspective of a 13-year-old was absolutely brilliant, and I'd like to know how you thought of it.
How did I think of it? That's a great question. I think that we tend to take kids in that middle school age, and we aren't as open in front of them, and we talk about mental illness and suicide because we don't feel like they can handle it. But we're losing kids that age, and it feels like it's getting younger and younger. And I thought that a couple of things with the 13-year-old, other 13-year-olds could connect to that. And also to give them something where it's openly talking about it. We're not hiding it from them. We're not saying don't talk about it in front of them because they're not ready. I think that we're losing 10-year-olds to suicide. They have to be ready to talk about it. And also to talk about it does not encourage them to follow through on it. We need to, that's a myth that if you bring it up, that they're going to, that puts the idea in their head, but if the idea is in their head and nobody's talking about it, then they don't know it's okay to talk about it either, So that's really why. And also at that age, that's an age where they really are just starting to find their place in the world. And to have something of that magnitude happen to them, is just tremendous. And the thought processes of a 13-year-old are, I feel like, a little bit more, I don't want to say simple, but they're still so close to childhood, at that age. So that's why I chose it. Yeah.
So that's really your market too.
My market, yes, is youth, probably like, 12 to 18. But I've had lots of adults read it, lots of kids other age read it and say that they really connected. And that's been lovely. I also chose to write very short paragraphs I'm sorry, not paragraph, very short chapters.
Hmm, good.
It's yeah, because I know that when I tried to read for the first few months after losing my son, I couldn't concentrate. So I would read things that were, I could read like a page, I could read like a thought or something like that. And kids that age, for them to sit down and slog through this book doesn't have any humor in it, and that the chapters are 20 pages long or whatever is not that's not something that's written for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Hildy.
Yes.
Can I help you a little bit with? I said you told me that you told us that you're struggling with getting out your messages to the personal, and I can help you on that because I am in show business also.
Oh.
And so the way to process this is think about yourself or your product as a soap. Let's see, as a product. Mm-hmm. You are a product, and if people has to know about it. Let's see, there is a soap that is really great, but if nobody knows about it, people are never going to buy it, right? So package yourself as a soap. I think about myself, I am a soap, and I have to have a package, and people have to believe that that's the best soap in the world. Even though you know that you're not, but you have to have,
and that's, I think what you said is something that a lot of us struggle with, is that like that imposter. I feel like an imposter. Like, I am not who am I to think that I can write something that people are going to want to read?
A soap. You are a soap.
I'm soap. That's a great way to look at it. I mean, it is a product because you really are trying to get people's attention.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if you have great ideas, evidently this has to be shared. Yep. But nobody knows about it. It's in the drawers and somewhere. Exactly. So think about it that you're giving a gift to the world. You're giving a gift of yourself. It's a gift. You're giving a gift. And I'm sure you are a person who likes to give. So if you attach a positive idea to it's not a negative, I am too much, they're not going to like me because I'm pushing myself. Right. There is a background, of course, but think about it that this is something that you are giving out of yourself. You share.
Right. Something they don't have to do.
Something kind, something nice.
Yeah.
It's not like me. It's something like you and me, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great perspective.
Alan, did you want to mention something?
Yeah. We've been doing some talk about isolation and things like that. And I was a listener on a crisis hotline for 16 years. And we were trained in handling suicide calls. And we learned that it's very important not to isolate these people, but to talk to them. It's okay to say, are you thinking of hurting yourself? It will not give them ideas that they don't already have.
Yes.
And I had some really interesting calls. In one case, the woman who I think was in the San Francisco area started off the call by saying, my life has never been worth living. And we chatted and I listened and we chatted some more. And finally she talked about Long Beach and the good time she'd had in Long Beach. And by the end of the call, she was saying, I'm going to move back to Long Beach because people care about you there. And it was one call that ended in a very positive way. Of course, they don't all do that, but
Right.
it is important to talk, to have an open atmosphere, to communicate, and to go down in the hole with the person who's
Yes.
depressed and not just stay above them.
Yes. And that's a really great way to phrase it too, because they really are in a hole. Yeah.
Well, this is what's so great about, see, I've known Alan for years. I didn't know that about him, that for that many years, he was on a crisis hotline. Wow. So see how we can, once it's out there, we can help each other just with
Yeah.
whatever we have to offer. And again, I saw the meme, people nowadays, they're more concerned about what books that they're reading in school than about guns being brought in.
Right.
And that's a connection too, because the shooter actually pretty much has a suicidal intent
Absolutely.
to do that. So, but to take others along with them is just, so it just needs to be directed. Anybody else?
Mo, did you have a question? I saw you had your hand up.
Oh, yes, thank you for noticing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell you how absolutely moving the scene with your father jumping was. A lot of moving scenes, and I relate to your being poor. And I have a trivial question, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Where in Arkansas did you go to?
Oh, I grew up in Missouri.
Pardon? I know,
Missouri.
but you said you made a trip.
Oh, I'm
to
sorry. Yes.
Arkansas.
Little Rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a different place from where I grew up in rural Arkansas.
Oh, did
And I wrote a
you?
book about, yes.
Oh,
But
you
it was
wrote a book
very,
about it?
pardon me?
You wrote a book about it?
Yes, right. Last trip home, about growing up in rural Arkansas in the 1940s and 50s.
Oh,
I've
wow.
actually published 7 books, but I'm
Oh my
81
goodness.
and I'm not going to do any more. But I'm
You done.
fiddling. You could give me some advice, and maybe some more sophisticated people. Something I'm working on, maybe for a long short story or whatever, are some stories that I wrote about a menage a trois I had in 1977, and it went on for 7 years, off and on. The man just died, so I can't hurt him. His wife is late stages of Alzheimer's, so I can't hurt
Oh.
her. But I don't know, maybe I'll hurt me. Maybe I'll hurt you all if you read it. I don't think there's a market for that. And what would be the market? Like, where would I can't stand to publish another book. So what format would I put it in?
Huh. That's interesting. I really feel like that's something that I find it fascinating, honestly, and to read about the feelings involved in that and how it lasted that long. I think that
Yes.
I think that part of it is something that is very compelling.
Unusual, yes. Well,
Yeah.
mostly we lived in different places, but we visited a lot, and they
Uh-huh.
were very wealthy. He was like an oil multimillionaire,
Mm-hmm.
and she was another English professor who
Uh-huh.
that my third husband and I introduced her to. And so the character, she was a sophisticated New York woman, and I was a redneck from Arkansas.
Right.
So the characters are so different, so in contrast with each other, that's probably more interesting than the sex. But that's
It really, yeah, absolutely.
That
I
would
think
be
that's
full.
fascinating. I mean, if you could really get in there and give us those perspectives and find the voices of those characters and what they're thinking, that's compelling. I would read that.
Would you? Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah.
I'll keep fiddling with it.
Yeah,
That's,
do. I wish like we should connect so that we can, bounce ideas if you want.
Okay, I'll put my information in the chat room.
Perfect.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
okay.
Also, it looks like, Bo, did you have your hand up as well?
I thought your dialogue was excellent, especially when you were calling your father when you were using Papa or something similar to that. I thought your dialogue was very good.
Thank
And
you.
another thing I wanted to say about depression, I've been suffering from depression since 1981, when 2 days before I was going to get married to this particular man, he drowned in front of me. So off and on, I've been dealing with depression. But then I was at a poetry reading. I live in Pasadena, California, and I was at a poetry reading, and one of the poets read a piece of poetry about when he was thinking about committing suicide. And then all of a sudden, it came to me, because I really loved Robin Williams, and there are so many gifted, talented people who have taken their lives. And I wonder why, when they have, it's not the material things that they have, it's not the monetary things that they have, but then I came to it, no matter what they have here on earth, for whatever reason, they just don't want to be here anymore. It's absolutely nothing on earth that can keep them here. The ones who are successful.
Right.
This is what my conclusion was.
Right. And I think that, yeah, I think that is, when I think of people like that, and I think of the famous people who seem to have it all, and the people who say, you know, oh my gosh, I thought they were so happy, I thought they had everything, because it's not, depression is an illness.
Sure it is.
Sadness is an emotion. And so their brain is sick, you know, and I think that hopelessness is just something that your brain tells you when it's ill.
But what also, I think that whatever the element is that placed them in a position where they're totally hopeless, whatever the hopelessness is, they don't want to deal with anything absolutely anymore.
Right. They can't. They can't take one more thing.
Nothing.
They have no space for it.
Words, absolutely nothing. This is the way I have summed it up, because I think about it, so many people have so much to give, and so many people love them. It's not about who loves them. I don't think they don't even take under consideration how many people they're going to probably hurt. You know,
they don't see it like that. They feel like they feel as though they're doing people a favor.
I don't know.
That they will make their lives easier by not being here anymore.
I don't know. I had a girlfriend. She was a Playboy bunny, and she had 5 kids, and she left all her 5 kids, little kids. I mean, and she was had a lot going for her, but with suicide, I just can't understand it, because so many of them, you know, and I think yesterday or a day before, some young 22-year-old went to Stanford. She just took her life. It's hard for me to digest. I can't even figure out the reason, other than absolutely nothing here can keep them here. Nothing. This is my conclusion on it. I can't understand that, because when I look at the people, especially the ones that are household names that have taken their life, they have so much to give, and so many people love them. But that's not, they don't even think about that, who they're going to hurt, or they don't consider that. I can't explain it, but I'm sorry for your loss. Very sorry.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, See, we have a lot of shared experiences just from talking about it,
Mhm.
keeping it open. Well, does anyone else have any comments or any questions or anything at this
One last
time?
little thing I'll mention is that I really appreciated how Kendra's story really made the point to not blame anybody for what happened. I think, sometimes when we run into situations like this, we either think like, why did this person make this decision to do this? Or, what was going on around them or whatever. And instead, Kendra was really clear that, this wasn't anybody's fault. It wasn't like somebody was trying to hurt somebody or whatever. In fact, I've heard from Kendra and from other sources now, people are making a point when something like this happens, instead of saying somebody committed suicide, it's saying
Yes.
that they passed from suicide, because committing makes it sound like a crime.
Exactly.
It's
A
like,
sin or a
yeah,
crime.
right.
I use completed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Attempted or completed. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you, William. That's
a perfect point again, because I forgot, because I wasn't raised religiously to think of it as a sin, but it is tremendously impressed upon a certain group that
it is.
it's a sin and not a disease. It's
Right.
just, wow.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully we can progress. Yes, Bo.
Oopsie.
I was just thinking of something else. With the cycle of life, we're going to age. Some of us get sick, and then we're going to die. Now, nobody gets out of here alive. That's absolute. We all have to go. Now, I was also thinking about the different ways that people go. You're going to get sick with the illness. Maybe you're going to be in the wrong place, and somebody will do something to you. Unfortunately, some people get murdered, or God's going to take you. So you, or then people who take their own lives. But there are only certain ways that we can leave here. So certain things, I think people, if you associate with bad elements, the propensity of leaving here and by getting murdered might be high. So if you don't want to go that way, then you have to avoid that type of associates. And then I think that, but with suicide and all of that, no, I think that is so very sad. And I'm so sorry for you. Feel so bad about that. But it's just a sad situation. And I think that more people, more authors, because we have the ability to express it, others don't. And I think we should touch on that, because that's a serious matter, and it hurts so many people, and it just so many people. It leaves, some of them are devastated for the remainder of their lives. Some people can't pull it together. All people don't have that ability to pull things back together. But I think writers should write more about that. But then how could you really write about death, hurting, if you never had the desire to do it yourself? Because how would you really know what goes on in a person's head to make them want to do that? Because at this particular point in time, all of us have a different thought in our head. So how can we say what a person might be thinking at that particular time to do whatever they do? That's all.
I would like to know, Kendra.
Yes.
I want to say how really much I like your evocative writing. You're very, very tactile, very visual.
Thank you.
And I'm hoping that that this next book you're doing, you'll let us know.
I will.
When it's
I
out.
will.
Would you?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to get this book because I know
Oh,
kids. So, and I'll get this new book. I can get it through Amazon. Did you, or did you self-publish, or I'm
I
sorry, I should know
self-published
that.
through Amazon. Yes.
Did you? Okay,
Mhm.
so they'd have to buy it from Amazon.
Yeah, it's either available in paperback or it's also an ebook. So
Okay, all right, good, thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
absolutely. Thank you.
Ginger, that the information for her book should be in the flyer also, if you didn't get it in the chat here.
Yeah, I probably should have.
That's
It's
okay. No,
included in
that's
the
okay.
in the flyer. And talking about, if no one else has any other questions or comments for Kendra, I'd like to know what William's been up to lately, and with his beautiful series of amazing, fantastic books. Tell us.
Well, thanks. I'm not the main attraction today, but a couple of things. I've been pretty busy lately with work in grad school, but I am working on the third book in my series. I have the rough draft for it finished, and now I'm working on making some of the edits. And one thing that I've been trying to work on is figuring out the next two books beyond that in the series. I have kind of outlines for them, and I'm trying to think through everything before I put the third one out to make sure that I set everything up in the third one that needs to appear at that point. So I'm not sure when exactly that's going to come out, but I'll keep you guys updated. And then I guess on the other front, I finally have my first thing in space, which is pretty exciting.
Yay.
We had a successful launch on Christmas morning at 4 in the morning. That went great. So very happy about that. And that was the James Webb Space Telescope. So that's the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. It's currently undergoing its commissioning process right now, and we're expecting to get our first pretty pictures back around May or June timeframe. We've already gotten some pictures back, but they're more of the kind of calibration technical type. They're not really like the "woo, that's cool," type pictures that we'll see later. So anyway, that was exciting. I'm happy about that. And then I have another launch that's happening this year sometime. I don't know when exactly it's going to happen because it keeps getting moved. Right now it's supposed to be June, but that is subject to change. So I'll keep you guys updated as well.
Talk about a man of the future. He's hopefully the future of our clubs too.
Gosh.
But keep on. But yeah, also, are you still working on your master's, or have you already, William, have you already?
Yeah, I'm doing that part-time. So I'm taking my classes at night. Usually one at a time right now. The one that I'm in at the moment is safety of space operations. So that's been pretty interesting. And then I just had a midterm last week, so I have a little bit of extra time this weekend. But usually I'm pretty busy with that. So yeah, I'm planning to finish my degree next calendar year, but the schedule is subject to change a little bit.
I just am, how he's done all this, the books, the whole series, going to school, launching, good for you. It's exciting.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Aw.
Can I just add, because I'm his mother, I can't help it, that this third book to me is my favorite so far. It is shorter than
It is
the other
shorter,
two,
yes.
and which is a good thing, I think. And it's also very romantic and adventurous. It's kind of I don't know.
It's a Western.
Yeah, it's a Western set in
Yes.
the outback, and it
Yeah.
has a lot of reminiscences of what is that character?
Oh, Zorro?
Yeah, it's kind of like Zorro,
Yeah.
but set in the outback.
Yeah.
Much earlier time.
Much earlier. Yeah.
Much earlier time. frame.
Yeah.
But anyway, I like it because of that. So
Yeah.
just that's my plug.
Can't wait.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
William, have you found very many instances yet where you wish that you had included something in the previous books?
That's a great question. I was pretty careful with the first two books to make sure that was all in there. But I have found that in the course of planning out book 4 and 5, that there were some course corrections that I needed to go back and make in book 3. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that before it's getting released. So that's been interesting. And then kind of way further down the line, I've been thinking a little bit about some additional stories for the series set much later in the 20th century, as opposed to the current ones, which were in the 13th and 14th century. So those are down the road, but I've been kind of doing some pre-planning for those as well. But yeah, it's when you have like an overarching series, it's important to think, okay, is there anything that I want to plant the seed for now, as opposed, so it doesn't show up as like, well, where did this come from later? So for example, in book 3, there's some characters that I realized needed to be introduced sooner. I realized that the book 3 actually flows more naturally into a later book than I originally thought it did. So anyway, stuff like that.
Yeah, episodic sagas are very difficult to project into it. What's Game of Thrones, George, how he did that is just amazing too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It requires
Good.
a lot of kind of pre-planning.
Yes.
I mean, to a certain extent, you can kind of wing it, but it's better if you have a
Right.
plan
You
beforehand.
can always say, especially like in television with, oh, okay, all of a sudden they throw this in. Well, where'd that come from? So
Yeah.
yeah. Good for you. I still envision it as we'll have to talk when it's all.
Yeah, it could, that'd be pretty cool.
I'm working with this producer on, my TV series, so
Wow.
we'll see how that goes too. And Ildi, we're gonna get Ildi's screenplay out there too. We got
need
interest
that
in it.
movie,
We just
I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, just one thing at a time though. But yeah, talk about interesting, Kendra, for Ildi here also. So this, she wrote a novel, really, actually it's, based on her life, historical novel. And the log line is, I really just focused, I wrote a screenplay, I'm a screenwriter, so I adapted a screenplay from her novel. And basically the log line is about her father who shepherded his family through Nazism, communism, and the Hungarian Revolution while being targeted as a war criminal, unjustly targeted as a war criminal. Got elements of Schindler's List. You're muted, LD. It's got elements of, you're muted, unmute yourself. It's got elements of Schindler's List, and I see Dr. Zhivago in it too, a lot of it.
Oh, it was his political enemies who muddied his, and he was a nicer, more humanitarian person in the world who elevated people to his height, and he I mean, I can't talk about it. But
how many languages did he speak again? I mean, when I read her book,
8 languages.
8 languages. And her book is so
He was a lawyer in 3 different countries.
3 different countries and from France. So I was able to focus more on her father's story for the screenplay to be able to condense it. And
great humanitarian, a wonderful person who was just love and loved for everybody. And muddied him this way was just a horrible situation.
I structured her too. He did certain acts for other people that then came back to benefit him. He didn't intend to. He just was, the kindness of his heart and basically saved people.
Yeah.
And then they end up saving him and the family without it, with it just working out that way. So, yeah. Well, folks, it looks like.
I have a question though. I tried to buy Alan's book. Actually, I bought it, but it disappeared. How do you get it? I bought it, and then I can't find it. I am looking into the downloads. I'm looking everywhere. It's nowhere to be found.
What did you? Is it a Kindle? Did you put it on Kindle? So did you open up your Kindle?
It should download automatically to a Kindle once you buy it. When you turn on your Kindle and the Kindle.
Oh, I don't have a Kindle on my computer.
Okay, so if you're doing it on the computer, I found this out the hard way too. You have to go to read.amazon.com, and then that is where your Kindle downloads go to on your computer.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm
read.amazon.com.
glad we've got an engineer here to tell us what to do.
See how we help each other, Kendra?
I found that out the hard way because I got a ebook recently, and then I was like, how do I get back to this? And then figured that out. So
so Alan, so if that happens, people now, all of us that have ebooks, how do I find it? We refer them to William.
So anyway, that might help you. I don't know, Ildi, if that'll solve your problem, but that's a place to start.
Thank you.
Well, folks, does anyone else have anything want to offer or talk about, or?
Yeah, I have one thing I want to say.
Oh, okay.
One thing I want to say. Was there somebody else too?
Ginger, go ahead, then we'll have Jay.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to thank you for always picking such really good speakers.
Thank you, William.
Oh, thank you, William. But
Thank you, William.
you're doing a great job, Jeri. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Jay, did you have something too? You're muted.
Yes. First of all, I enjoyed the reading. Her writing is very, very good. But I'm giving you a little different thought on the suicide thing. Barbara and I were discussing, we were on mute, and neither one of us, all the years we grew up, knew anybody that committed suicide. No friends, no schoolmates, whether it was young, middle-aged, college, we didn't have anybody that we knew of that committed suicide. I think it's an increasingly serious problem. It's escalating. I think that, you know, and it's not like we didn't have crises. We had polio, we had world wars, we had, we were hiding under our desk for a nuclear attack. I mean, there was always something that you could be worried about, that you could kill yourself over if it took it so seriously. I think, I hate to say it this way because it sounds kind of cold, but I think that in fact, we were learned to be self-reliant and not dependent on anybody or other things so much. Today, I think we're teaching everybody that they have to be taken care of and protected, and they need to have more self-reliance, and that's being taught to them, I'm afraid. We didn't have support animals and safe spaces and things like that. We learned to cope, and it was taught to us to do it. And today, I think we're just dependent, I'm afraid, and I'm really concerned about it. Anyway.
It's a crisis, you know, we really are in a crisis. And, you know, I'm not one to disagree with anybody's theory or to, you know, because that makes as much sense as anything else.
I think we're doing it to ourselves in a way. And
absolutely.
That's,
absolutely. And you know, we also have
societal.
Well, and I was going to say, social media is a huge problem. I think that these kids are constantly connected. You know, when my son was younger,
artificially connected.
Right. We didn't even have television for years when my kids were growing up. But then, and they got phones in high school. And but it's the video games, it's that constant tether, you know, and what they're seeing isn't real. What they're seeing on Facebook, what they're seeing on Instagram, they've taken 50 pictures to get just that right one. You know, they're seeing things that everybody's life looks perfect, you know, and there must be something wrong because theirs isn't, you know.
I enjoyed your writing very much.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Keep us posted when it's out there, and we'll.
I will. Thank you.
We'll have
thank
you
you for
back.
inviting me. And William, thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah. Bo, did you want to say something?
No, I did. I did.
Yes. I'm writing my first novel, and I was wondering if anyone can direct me where I can get some literary assistant. I think I'm at a point where I'm so stuck. I've done an awful lot of research, but I'm at a point where I'm just not sure what to do. I'm at the beginning of it. So could anyone direct me?
Anyone? How to? I don't know. We're all kind of started somewhere. Groups like this. Do you have local groups where you are also that?
Yeah, I'm in Pasadena. I've been dealing with the Greater Los Angeles Writers Society. They have meetings once a month, and I've been sitting in with them. And as a matter of fact, I've been publishing an anthology with Southwest Manuscript some time ago.
Oh,
in one of your
Okay.
anthologies.
Yeah, I
Right.
remember now, of
One
course.
of your poetry anthologies.
Yeah.
I've been published a great deal. I'm also a self-published author, and I've been published in 56 local, national, and international books. And my first book is permanently housed in the Burton's Historical Collection for Michigan authors to be used by the public for reference. And I'm also the founder of a national organization, the Organization of Black Screenwriters. And I've just completed 3 books that'll be out released pretty soon. They're poetry books. One is Chaos.
3:45.
Go ahead, Bo. Continue. That was
They're entitled, the 3 that I've just completed. The first one is entitled Chaos, one is entitled Choice Poetry, and one is entitled Recovery Poetry, Tanka Poetry. So those, I just finished those, and so they're with a publisher now. I'm a self-published author also. And I've written a textbook, and I've been trying to secure me an agent because I want to at least have my textbook published by a traditional publisher, but I understand that only certain publishers publish textbooks. So, but I need a publisher anyway, because what I'm also doing right now is with the publisher that I'm dealing with, I'm going to have 14 of my books converted into ebooks. So we're working on that now. I just have to submit him my files. And that's where I am with my literary career now.
sounds like you're way ahead of the game for so many of us.
No, I might have achieved lots of things as far as work and accomplishments, but on a monetary level, probably not.
Welcome to the club.
That's true. All the writers I know are in the same situation.
Even in my own business, 50 years of hard work, 50 years of hard work and not a penny. You must be crazy.
All of the ones I talked to, hey, we're all in the same situation. It's funny, but it's all good. It's all good.
It's been great to see all of you. I think we're going to have to head out here, but Kendra, thank you so much.
William, Beth, it's so nice seeing you.
William, nice seeing you. Come back. Come back more often to us. We need you.
I love you,
if I can. Thank
I love your
you.
work, Kendra.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Had you wanted to say something, Joy? Is that yes or no?
I just had a comment on what Mr. Simpson said about, they never heard of suicide. I'm probably the oldest one here. I'm 91. And when I was growing up, anybody that committed suicide, it was considered such a disgrace and such a shame that nobody talked about it. But people did commit suicide. We had, I heard about it when I was a little girl, but it was always hush, 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 hush. And it's now people are talking about it and people are getting help, which Kendra, your book is probably going to do a lot for. But the problem of depression is very pervasive. It was never addressed before. People always were, told, lighten up, get over it. And it was never treated as an illness. But I have a family who had bipolar, and my cousin described it as being down in the bottom of a hole that you can't climb out of. And anyway, I'm a little late in this conversation, but I wanted to reply that
Joy, that's perfect. Everything has existed before, everything under the sun. We're just now opening up the boxes, and a lot of people want to still keep them in the boxes, and we can't do that. Not only with suicide, with PTSD, for military service, for all these things, and maybe in the past people had accidents that actually were suicidal. So yeah, nothing is new under the sun. It's just how we now can pour the light on it. So yeah. Well, does anyone else want to? This has been a great meeting. I tell you, we're learning things about people too. That again, Alan, I'm so impressed with you being on the suicide prevention line. There's a subject for you too. Wow.
Yeah, it was actually it wasn't all bad at all. There were lots of good calls. They were not all suicide calls, and even the suicide calls, as I gave an example, did not always end badly. And there were a lot of young people who volunteered for that, and I think that really helped them a lot. They learn not to hide their feelings, and which is very important, and not to isolate themselves. And with the pandemic, of course, this unfortunately has been happening, and I know that the suicide rate among young people has gone up, and we've got to turn it around.
That's really a thought that occurred to me too, but
how to turn around?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Well, again, I know what it was, thinking about, okay, such as yourself, Alan, it can only, sometimes all it needs is just one person to be in your camp that can make you feel like, okay, just one person. So you being at the other end of that phone, Alan, I hopefully have found it in this producer that I'm working with. If my TV series ever takes off, it's just this one person who is absolutely sold on it. And like if just you, Kendra, as one person, can reach, especially writing to that age group, again, and that's, I think a lot of with modern society too, we get so busy that a lot of us can't become that one person. And, it's, and you should never be afraid or embarrassed to ask for help. That's another thing, a certain amount. We're all living such a fractured life too nowadays too. In the olden days, as far as I know back too, a lot of them had communities. Again, my grandmother, we would visit my mother's family in Missouri, in Kansas, and the whole different culture there. People came together, they helped each other. But then out in California, we could live next door to somebody and not even know who they are.
That's
so I'm
true.
glad at a young age I was introduced to those two different, parts of society. And I think that's what we're missing. The more industrialized, the more whatever we become, and we lose that community spirit that you have.
I agree.
And especially, I remember from what you're reading, I remember sitting around a campfire at my grandmother's cabin in the Ozarks and telling ghost stories because we didn't have TV.
Right. Right.
And so we made up our own ghost stories right then. And all of a sudden the bushes would rattle and it's like, a skunk could walk through or something. And it's like,
Right.
But that's how we entertained each other. And now there's just so much, again, with media, so much dependence on materialism and everything that we've just taken away from the community.
There's a disconnect.
There is a tremendous disconnect. And I think that's a major also. So
yeah. Well, I'm going to have to run, but thank you so much.
Please come and join us. You're on our list now, so please join us whenever. Okay.
Oh, I can.
You for.
Oh yeah, send me an email. I would love to do that.
On Zoom, there's no membership dues, so.
Oh, wonderful.
And we're gonna start in person, but we're also gonna do like every other month on Zoom. So you'll be kept informed. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Ildine. We'll talk. And Van, Van. Hi, Van. Okay, we can go ahead
There
and
we
stop the
go.
recording. We're out of here.
Van, are you okay? I see you. You are in a hospital.